my saga of no's was wild for me because my capacity went from like 110 miles an hour, dangerously on the highway of life,
Yeah.
to like 3 miles per hour. And it was shocking for me, really, to need to slow down that much to just even be able to function. I didn't recognize myself.
Hi, friends, and welcome to Echoes of Impact. I'm Briana.
And I'm Charisse. We're so glad you're here with us.
On this podcast, we're dedicated to sharing real stories of how God shows up in life's challenges, how He can grow us, shape us, and use our experiences for something bigger.
So if you love Jesus and you want to walk more boldly in your purpose, you're in the right place.
Let's do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of Echoes of Impact. I'm your host, Briana, and today we're joined by Emily Love. We don't have Charisse with us today, but she's here in spirit, and we're just really excited about today and this conversation with Emily. We're going to be talking about how it feels when we are doing the do, like we're doing things for our lives, for our purpose, for God, and we're just going ahead at full speed versus being able to focus on the presence of God and even just sitting in His presence and learning to walk with Him and be able to live out our purpose like through that relationship with Him in a way that might be at a slower pace. And that's something I'm sure most of you listening could resonate with. It's very easy to kind of get caught up in all of our to-dos. And, when we get asked to do things, it's very easy to just say yes, especially when it's good things. And so one big message we're going to be talking about is like being able to say no to even good things so that we can say yes to God's best things. So I'm so excited that you're here with us, Emily.
So good to be with you today. Thank you so much, Brianna. And yeah, I'm just excited to dialogue about this topic that's been near and dear to my heart and very tender the last few years.
Mm, yeah, tender. I appreciate that. So, for our listeners, I'll just give a little short intro to Emily. She's born and raised in the Kansas City area. She says she's a proud Swiftie, which we're really missing Sharice on this one. It's not that I'm not a Swiftie, but I like her and I respect her, but I don't share that same sentiment. I know you have Swiftie bracelets on,
Yeah.
and I'm sure Sharice is wearing hers, but yes. And so Emily, she's in the Kansas City area, and she says she comes alive when she's creating meaningful gatherings, exploring the outdoors, making art, and sharing heartfelt conversations. So I'm excited to have that heartfelt conversation with you today. And in her professional life, she has a background in education and event planning. She's the owner of Emily Love Events, which is a local event design company, and is also a spiritual director in training, which sounds so interesting. So, just a personal note from me is that for our listeners, some of you might know, and a lot of you might not. My husband and I were professional wedding photographers for the past 16 years. We just retired almost exactly a year ago, and we did or worked alongside Emily for at least a couple weddings, although I'm not sure who because they start blending together. But the important thing is that I remember Emily because she is a light and just a lovely presence to be around. So I'm really excited for this today. So, Emily, before we kind of dig into your faith journey, what led you to today, we always start by asking the same question, which is what does living out your purpose mean to you?
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you so much for that generous introduction. Such a joy to know and work with you in the wedding industry lane, and then also get to
Mm,
share this space together today. Man, I love that question. The way I think about it a lot is sort of twofold. At the very bottom foundational layer of purpose is belovedness, that we're creatures beloved by
yeah,
God. And then inside of our
that's good.
image bearing is that we reflect particular things about who God is. And for me,
Mm,
I think just like the guts of it, the place where I feel most alive is celebration. Celebrating, others, celebrating in ritual, in events and gatherings, and really hospitality. And a big part of my story is learning not only to host others, but learning to host self and to host and celebrate from a place of overflow.
Hmm. Host self. Tell me more.
Well, I I grew up in the Christian faith in my home and church world and community and college that became more my
Mhm.
own, and I learned more of my identity in Christ. Most of my life, I've been a go girl, like big engine, a lot of ambition, a lot of ideas. I want to try them all, and I've really pulled
Yeah.
off a lot of stuff, and that was great.
I resonate with that.
That was great, and I don't regret an ounce of it. It's all been a gift, and
Yeah.
God, there's been a lot of invitation in it too, but and all of that, and if you're Enneagram speak, any listeners, I
Mm,
identify as an Enneagram 2, wing 1, high wing 3, so I love
yeah.
to help, I love to host, I love to get things done, I like to get them done right, and I like to
Connect.
do a lot, and connect.
Mhm.
And so that is beautiful. That's part of the essence of my image bearing goodness that I get to reflect of who God is.
Yes.
And I have learned that in order to host those spaces for others, I need to learn how to host myself. And I think about it a lot. And
Mm.
Brianna mentioned that I'm in training to be a spiritual director. And in the program I'm in, they talk about this idea of pitcher, cup, saucer, plate. And the cup is us, and the saucer is like our relationships, our people, and the plate is our work in the world. And the pitcher is God, and just it's a bottomless pitcher and unending love. And so hosting myself, I've really been the last 4 or 5 years on a journey home to learning how to do the as yourself part of love your neighbor as yourself. So that then,
Yes.
I'm learning how to get my cup filled up by the love of God, and then that can spill over, and I'm coming from a place of overflow into my relationships and the spheres that God has given me to be in any given season. So,
I wanna pause you real quick because I just wanna make sure our listeners don't miss something that you said that's really important. The verse you mentioned, "Love your neighbor as yourself," it was only in the last year that I felt like I was taught, "As yourself."
mhm,
Like, it's like we just, like, breezed right over that. It's just like, "Love your
yeah,
neighbor."
mhm,
And you could say it one way. You could say, well, for some of us, it's not hard to love ourselves. If you think of maybe people who are more naturally self centered, selfish, right? Maybe they don't have a hard time loving themselves and
mhm,
they need to learn to love their
mhm,
neighbor more. But
yeah,
there's this other group of people, which I tend to run into more often, specifically in the woman world, is women who struggle to love and take care of themselves. Or
uh-huh,
another way to put that, right? It's not just a
mhm,
love of self, is seeing ourselves and loving ourselves the way that God sees us and
mhm,
loves us. There
mhm,
is a
yes,
healthy God centered love of self. And as
mhm,
you mentioned, like having that be the foundation so that as we're serving others, we're not serving from a wounded place and from a false
mm,
identity,
good,
but in a more
mhm,
rooted,
mm,
true identity in Christ. And that's going to come across better. And it's going to give us also like the stamina
mm,
for it, right? Because not pouring from the empty cup means when we are already filled and we understand that love of Christ for ourselves, then we
mhm.
are pouring from abundance when we're serving others, more likely anyway, right?
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful and well said. I think a distinction that's really helped me, and you hit on this, is loving self is coming into alignment and agreement with the way that God loves us and who God
Mm,
says we are. It is not worshiping
yes.
self. I mean, I had a kind of throwdown with God about this at one point.
Yep.
Like, I can love myself because there is a lot of messaging that I think can be confusing around that,
Yep.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
there's I think what we're invited to die to is our false self, like you were saying. And
Yes.
and and really that process is more of a healing and an invitation into wholeness and into our the truest self that God has made for us to be. And that's a journey. I mean, that's a whole journey of most of our whole life on this side of Eden.
Yes.
But I think it can get confusing, especially inside of narratives of like, serve, serve harder, like, a lot, take care of people. Oh, we should, we must, like, love our neighbor, but when we put our oxygen mask on first and experience and receive the love of God and bask in our own belovedness and soak it up like a sponge, we
Mhm.
cannot help but it, like, pour over, I wish I had a picture here and I'd show it, like,
Right.
and it's just that
Flows out.
then it flows out because we can't help it,
Mhm.
and we really can run around with everyone else's cup trying to fill it up, and that's not wrong or bad,
Right.
and this is not, like, even to be inside of a framework of get it right or do it perfect. It's more of, like,
Mhm.
we have the invitation of going first with God in our own hearts so that we can actually take people where we've gone and invite people where we've gone.
Right.
We can't actually invite people where we've never gone. We can talk about it and tell anyone about
Yeah.
it because we know
Mhm.
about it, but to slow our roll enough to receive it for ourselves and to host ourselves with the type of generosity that is coming from our
Right.
maker, that's a whole different paradigm to invite people into.
Then it's also more God's strength rather than us trying to do it from our
Mhm.
own strength. Because when we're not filling with Him, it means that we think we've got it.
Yeah.
And as one a multi-entrepreneur to another, one who has,
Mhm.
we have some similarities here in our stories and our capacities. And my capacity has greatly shifted as well, but it's more intentional now
Yeah.
too, because I've realigned where I'm spending my time and energy, and sometimes it can feel like I'm doing less,
Mhm.
but that is the upside down kingdom of
Mhm.
God too, is that in my doing less, He can actually do more with it
Mhm.
if I'm rooted in Him.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
had quite a rabbit trail there, but I also, you can continue to tell us what you've been through so that we can learn from what you've had to learn.
Yeah, well, I think it was actually a really lovely way to set it up, the sharing of,
Yeah.
a little more of my story, because that's the theme is learning to really host myself, know and live from a place of belovedness and being versus doing. And, the journey's not over. I'm very much still right in the middle of it. I think I will be forever. I really, just to get specific, in the last 5 years, God just invited me into deeper layers of that. Brianna mentioned I have a background in education and also an event planning company. And I was running really hard most of my professional life in both lanes.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
just like an absolute dreams come true and gifts. And what's also true is I was able to do it for a long time. I don't think I realized at all I was doing. I have a pretty big engine, pretty high capacity,
Yeah.
until I didn't. And my body did start keeping
Yeah.
the score, and I kind of had phases of my body at where it's speaking up, and I would slow down and listen, but it was still moving in both of my lanes, pretty full force, maybe a little slower speed. And then about 5 years ago, it really came to a halt. It was about the time of the onset of the pandemic and the shutdown, and that time frame was the first time I'd ever really had boundaries imposed on my pace.
Mm.
And I realized how burnout I was. I breathed for the first time, and I began making some changes at that point, and through the intersection of pandemic, the burnouts, several other really difficult circumstances all happening at the same time, I found myself in a season, like, I call it my scraping myself off the floor season. Really in 2020 through fall
Oh,
2021,
that
it
doesn't
was
sound great.
yeah, it was tough. I mean, I was just very much I didn't
Scraping yourself
Mhm.
off the floor.
Off the floor. It was a messy time. And both of
Yeah,
my lanes
sounds lovely.
right? Both of my lanes vocationally
Right.
were affected uniquely inside of the pandemic days. And so there was a lot
Well,
of
we know that too as
heightened
parents
stress.
with kids in
Yes.
school and wedding industry, in
Wedding
some ways, we're
industry,
running parallel to
reschedule. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it was
for sure.
it was a lot for
A
everyone,
mess.
and it felt think inside of where my body was already headed and my nervous
Yeah.
system, that added layer just really took me to a place of, in nervous system language, I mean, I was like kind of in shutdown. And so I was just scraping
Mm,
to do every day. And my cortisol levels were crazy. Thankfully, in the winter of 2021, I was able to get some help from my medical team, and we made a lot of progress. I began what I call the saga of no's, and that at that
the
point, I had a
saga
turning
of
point, I had a panic
no's.
attack, and at that point, I was like, this is not good. Like, I've gotta make some changes for my body, but
Mm,
also for my soul, and
yes. It's usually the soul notices it first, and the body is when we're not listening, though.
oh,
It's
yeah.
like our body has to get louder and louder
Mm,
until it's like, "You can't not
mm,
listen to me anymore."
yeah, it's true, and I had really always I've been given the gifts of, like, some real vocational, huh, blossoming and enjoyment, like, the worthy work that I made to
Yeah.
do on this earth and community, but inside of those spaces, I was just running at a pace that I didn't know anything different than that because I'd always done
Mm.
that. That had been modeled in a lot of spaces for me, and, I was proud of my hustle, and I was gaining a lot of ground in all areas in
Right.
a certain kind of way
Right.
and meeting certain kinds of goals, and that's great, but that's not a whole life, That's not living a whole life. That's living very concentrated in one part of the pie, and so my saga of no's was wild for me because my capacity went from like 110 miles an hour dangerously on the highway of life
Yeah.
to like 3 miles per hour. And it was shocking for me, really, to need to slow down that much to just even be able to function. I didn't recognize myself.
And just to pause real quick, when you say saga of no's, just for our listeners, even though I think I know what you mean like where I used to say yes and the spaces that I'm like, "I'm your girl, I've got you. I can help with that." You had to start saying no.
I exactly.
Is that
Basically,
okay?
opportunities would arise, which opportunities are gifts, of course.
Yes.
And I literally I could barely do my jobs and take care
Mhm.
of basic things because my body was so burned out. And so I just had to start
Hmm.
one by one as things came my way. It's no, it's a no. I was excited
Say
that I
no.
would want
Yes.
to do. And I had to look at what was on my plate and start really downsizing it. Like, how can I even
Yeah.
change some internal expectations? Because you know, the initial version of an expectation I might have for myself as what success is in any number of things in my life might have like
Mm.
a bar way up here. That's a lovely idea. But I had to start lowering the bars and considering that success. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I didn't
At
really
what
know,
cost?
yeah, at what cost. And ultimately, it
Right.
was an invitation into sort of detangling my work and effort and hustle and,
Yeah.
accomplishments from my identity.
Even
Like
identity. Yeah,
mhm,
exactly. Yeah,
mhm,
your identity was probably in what you could accomplish, what you could
mhm,
do.
mhm.
Yeah.
And there's a type of security there, not only like a physical security,
Mhm.
but
Sure.
when it's connected to work and, finances and profit, but also there's a type of security in that I really and many of us, we get enmeshed in our work or our success or
Yeah.
our the things we do as who we are. And we're very much
Yes.
invited to co-labor with God and each other on this earth. And that's not our most ultimate identity. That shifts and changes
Right.
variably in many different seasons. And man, I really got a an intense invitation into uncoupling from that, uh, and having to look hard at places where I was over functioning for other people in
Mm.
my life and over functioning even for my own expectations. Like I had to shift what success
Mhm.
meant. And it took a lot of practice. I was kind of forced into it during that season because my body just couldn't
Yeah.
I did not have the elasticity in my stress response. And so I had to slow down and just take bite-sized chunks of life. Like just I literally learn how to be present in the moment and in the day and complete the tasks at
Mm.
hand that were essential. And
So humbling.
it was wildly humbling. Coming from
Yeah.
110 miles to 3 is like and when your identity a lot of your identity, even unknowingly, is so much into what you can do and what you can accomplish, like, that level of disorientation requires a lot of gentleness with oneself.
Can I interject real quick? Because something you
Please.
said just really struck something to me. You were saying the 100 miles per hour to 3. The fact that you said 3 is so funny to me because there is actually a book, and I can't name the author, so sorry, whoever you are. It's called
Mhm.
The 3 Mile Per Hour God.
Yeah, I'm referencing that.
The 3 Mile Per Hour God. Okay. And I'm going to shout out Pastor Jake had a sermon
Aw.
at our church recently, and he talked about that, about how God invites us to walk with him.
Mhm,
And when we walk, it's 3 miles per hour.
mhm,
And we're trying to forge ahead and like do all these good things. But the truth of it is that if we're going ahead of him,
mhm,
right? Like we could be missing him. And this, if we walk alongside of him, we can be more productive than we realize, even though we
mhm,
feel like we're not.
mhm,
So I just had to interject because the fact that you
mhm.
said to 3 miles per hour just kind of tracks in even our walk with God
Yeah, it is really an invitation to pilgrimage, a pilgrimage of walking. And
of walking. Yeah.
for me, and I think for people, it looks different in different seasons. There's certainly seasons where that walking is, more reflected in
Mhm.
the heart posture. And there are seasons where there's more emotion and a concentrated things going on in our life. Um,
Yeah.
in general, for me, and what has needed to happen in this last season is learning how to physically move slower at a walk at the pace of grace,
Mhm.
honoring my creatureness and my personhood and my limits. Like I am not God. And in turn, that has helped tutor my heart into a slower pace of honestly surrender and
Mm.
and
That's a good word.
curiosity and presence.
Mhm.
Spaces before where I was moving so quickly and through the world in my life that while so much delight was happening and gifts and goodness and growth that I treasure. Yet that pace is not sustainable, that, you know,
Right.
slow down to listen. And I think where I've shifted a lot is I wanna live a listening life and
Mm.
a life of presence versus performance.
A listening life. That's quite a way to put it. We have to really slow down to listen. Even in our walk with God, how often, even when we're praying, how often we're just talking to Him,
Mhm.
which is great. I'm not saying don't talk to Him, for sure, talk to Him. But how often do we try to listen? It's almost like a next level.
Yeah. Well, we've never really learned it, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we've learned it a little bit, but it's so opposite. The way of Jesus, like, his unhurried presence is so
Mm,
opposite of all the narratives and the water that we're swimming in. So it really is a little bit of an upcurrent swim
yeah.
to
Mhm.
slow enough to listen to, for me, to learn how to listen to my body, to learn how to listen to my soul. I mean, I'd spent
Yeah.
lots of time, 2 times a year, my whole adult life, I'd gone and done like a weekend, silent pause retreat. And that was lovely.
Mm,
And what's true, so I'd practiced some listening. But what was true was there was a
mhm.
lot of feast or famine in how I was, living. And there are even
Yeah.
seasons probably where that's just how we make it, right? But that was my whole life. And so
Hmm.
being slowed down through a burnout experience and several very difficult circumstances, and then coming into some healing, and then as my healing was happening in 2022, I was in a terrible car accident, in fall of 22,
Ugh,
sustained a brain injury. Like,
the timing.
the timing was, yeah, it was. I think where I thought I had, like, done my saga of no's, I checked my boxes, Brianna, like, I'm like, "Alright, I've done my saga of no's. I've
You're like,
learned
"I'm
how to
good."
I'm good. I've learned how to slow down. I've
Yeah.
been doing all of these
Noted,
slower."
got the
Yeah,
lesson.
check. And I was really doing so much better. My cortisol levels were testing better. My nervous system in general was coming more into
Mm,
regulation more often. Like, we had gotten we had kinda, like, gotten to a point in the pandemic by that point where it's tail ends, like, we had figured out, how to do all the lanes in that world. And I was driving at highway speed on a highway. I was on Halloween, so 3 years ago, almost to the day, in between 2
crazy.
doctor's appointments, okay? And I was meeting a friend, I had enough time in between, I was like, "Let's go on a hike." Like, I hadn't seen people, okay? I'd had to slow down so much that I
Mhm.
just hadn't had as much relational connection. I was starting to kinda, like, peek my head up, from my little cocoon that God had scooped me into, and I smashed into the back of a concrete truck. So, I mean, it was
Uh,
really. Okay, I wasn't, even speeding. I mean, I was just on the highway, right? But it's
yeah.
from that moment of, impact, and then trickling down the days following, like, and weeks and months and a couple years, like, I was forced even more into a slowdown. And I mean, I couldn't believe it. I literally could not believe it, because I was like, "God, I thought we were doing some other stuff right now." Like, I thought we were learning how to, like, I could name it to you, like, come out of this enmeshed identity, and I was doing some really deep relational work and other inner work, and I was like, "What is this? And
Yeah.
am I gonna be okay?" Like, I mean, I had a very, very, very minor concussion, before in my life, but this was not that. I mean, this was a more serious concussion to the level that I was taking a couple of months out of the classroom and
Mhm.
having to
It
offboard.
really did change your
I
life.
had to absolutely change I literally had to
Yeah.
offboard my work to my team members in all aspects of my
Mhm.
life, and it was just so much more jarring. You know, I experienced this disorientation and burnout, and then this was like, I just didn't think we could go lower than it. I just did not think that could get
Mm.
more. We could go less than 3 miles per hour, and I mean, we're down to zero now. You know, and
Mm.
it was,
Can I can
yeah,
I
go
interject something
please.
here if I may? Because as you're listening, there's just been things a little bit in your story, and also I've heard this, in other people's stories as well, like where sometimes it is hard for us to see God's bigger picture in something, like,
Mhm.
God, I thought we were figuring that out. Why
Yeah.
did then this big thing happen? So I want to hold first, I want to honor and hold that it stinks. And that sounds awful.
Thank you.
And that is not a fun lesson to learn. But
Mhm.
if I may, as I was hearing you, I think there's a way to look at it too that you could see like the kindness of God as well. Like he knew that that wreck was going to happen and that it was going to be this brain injury, right? And if your life was going 110 miles and then smack, this thing changed everything literally. I just wonder if it might have been even more abrupt or felt even more cruel.
Mm.
In
Hmm.
a way, it was like
Yeah.
he was kind of flexing some muscles. You were
Mm.
getting reps almost, like you
Yeah.
were getting these lessons. He was planting seeds by teaching you some of these things. And then, yeah, that stinks that it had to be like next level. But at the same time, like you had been practicing some of that with him, working through some
Mhm.
of that identity piece and stuff
Mhm.
leading up to this, where it really changed things as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I really was, because of the work we had done together, and by work, I mean rest. I'm talking about inner work. I'm talking about inner work
Rest
here,
work.
rest work, which is a shift. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's actually the hardest
it's
work.
the
Isn't
hardest
that funny?
work because we have
It
to
is the
surrender
harder work.
inside of a resting places. We're having to surrender to the reality that God's at work when we're resting, and it's not all on us. And as
Mhm.
I was uncoupling everything, every ounce of my journey from like the onset of just the burnout realization and that real physicality of it, side of those early pandemic months, and to my car accident in 2022, I had just been tucked so under God's wing of learning, like I
Mm.
said, to just be, and that I am loved because He loves me, because I am beloved, and that is my birthright. Like as a creature, like I
Yeah.
am an image bearer, and to really, I think, attune me to our sturdy attachment that's always been
Yeah.
there, but that I needed to experience it more deeply. And so that really did make the reps you mentioned when the accident happened, it was very disillusioned. I mean, I felt so disillusioned of like, are you serious? Another health
Yeah.
journey? Are there no,
Yeah.
no.
I can imagine.
Exact like, inside of burnout, adrenal stuff, cortisol, all that, that's, like, mysterious stuff that bodies do when they're, like, raising their hands, and so
Right.
that hadn't been, like, a straight
Mhm.
line, like, "Hey, you have this, and here's the here's the treatment," and it wasn't A plus B equals C, it was a lot of trial and error and
Right.
really layered action and inaction, right? Like, a slowing in all lanes of my life, but the head injury was just a full baptism into surrender and letting go of control because I could not do the things I had always done and at a whole new
Right.
level. Like, even in burnout, I was still doing the things. I was just slowing down, at a different pace
Mhm.
and taking a lot more rest and sleep and care. But this was like, I can't even go to work for a few months. And then when I
Mm.
went back to my classroom, it was intermittent. And I had to just say, God's gonna take care of all the things and it's not all on me. And you know what? The
Mm.
sky didn't fall. Like,
Yeah.
it got taken care of. It was fine.
Mm.
And it helped me start letting go of those spaces that were very dear to me and that mattered because I had invested
Yeah.
so much there. But, you
Mhm.
know, eventually I made the decision to take a leave of absence. I finished that school year intermittently and made a decision to take a leave of absence and fulfill my event planning contracts and then take a sabbatical. And for 6 months, just to continue at the slower pace and show up to all the treatments I was going to. And I felt the nudge to do so. And it was one of the
Mhm.
scariest things I've ever done to take that leap. And it's been one of the best things for me.
That's beautiful. I'm curious, some of this now, not that you're totally out of the woods
Mhm.
and, all of that, but in a lot of ways you're looking back and seeing that hindsight, right? That we
Mhm.
can see things clear. But while you were in it, even though you knew you were working with God through things, were there times that you were angry, that you
Mhm.
were
Mhm.
upset with him, confused?
Yeah.
Like, was it hard like that to continue that walk and that faith with him when you felt like you kind of were getting kicked while you were down?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's so human. Like, we're people and our
Yeah.
emotions are real. And I think was a little angry, for sure. If anything, I was probably
Mhm.
overwhelmed and just like, are you kidding me? You cannot make this stuff up. Like, I
Mm.
just, I felt so disillusioned around the idea of another health journey. And I was like, God, no, no. And I think one of the gifts, even though I think like God never wishes this kind of harm on, I don't think God's like, I mean,
Right.
Jesus was sad too when we're in suffering that
Yeah.
he sat with us, was just a resounding knowing of God's presence through that process, And sometimes we are inside of wilderness seasons and we don't always feel God,
Right.
I mean, that's part of the journey too. And there were just enough and there were times when I was, like, confused, like, what way do I go? Am I doing the right thing? Even inside of a treatment journey, like, figuring that out and what doctor and who knows which one and how do I get, how can I make that work with my schedule, my work schedules, all of the thing. Um, that but as the story continued to unfold, there was just such tenderness that like an aroma of gentleness and tenderness between God and me inside of that mystery, inside of that dance, kind of poetic even of I'm with you and I love you. I mean, Brianna, on the day of my car accident, the first thing that happened
Mm.
when I walked out of the car, I mean, that is a miracle of God, and I know that there's so many
Mhm.
people that don't have the privilege of walking, after a devastating car accident, and, it could have been a lot of other ways, but a woman had pulled over, and she just hopped out of the car, and she was like, "Hey, I watched everything that just happened. Can I give you a hug?" And I was like, "Yes." And,
That's kind of odd.
it is, right? I mean, I've never offered that to anyone. I've never heard of that being offered, and in
Yeah.
many
"Hello,
ways
stranger."
Yeah.
And not like, "Are you okay?" or "Can I hug you? Am I gonna hurt you?"
Right,
Like,
right, right. It was just like, "Would you like a hug? Can I give you a hug?" And I felt like
no.
from that moment on in this whole that this segment of the journey was just God's hug and God's embrace and God just carrying me at every turn, even in the unknowns and that I don't get this and where are we going next, that, you know,
Yeah.
it was another invitation to be tucked up into his love and his provision and his presence and my belovedness.
Can you help put some more skin on this? Like, when you knew that God was near and that he still saw you and
Mhm.
was even talking to you during that time that you were dealing with that. So you gave, even the example of the lady that stopped after your wreck. But in those coming months, in your healing journey, like, can you put some skin on how you knew
Mhm.
God was near and how he talked to you,
Mhm.
just even for our listeners who might be listening and be like, what do you even mean when you say
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. Man, I there were so many different things that happened. I'll try to name just a couple. There And I wanna, I guess, nuance this a little bit. God talks to us in so many different ways, in so many different seasons.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
however, if as for any of us in any moment, there's no formula and there's not even like, God talked to Emily this way this one time, that means it'll be for me this time. It's so
Yeah, that's good.
customized to us, and that's part of the journey of learning to be
Mhm.
with him and learning to listen and be scooped up into that trust of sturdy attachment with God. But for me, there were just a series, I'll say a few physicalities that God just took care of. That woman, immediately after that, I was headed to go on a walk with a friend. Immediately after that happened, a doctor pulled over and was like, "Hey, are you okay? I happen to be driving and see this happen." After that, one of my best friends pulled over. She was who I was meeting, and she had a doctor friend that worked in urgent care like a mile away, called their office, got me in immediately. Like, those
Mm.
doctors called me personally the weeks following my car, like, made extra special time to take care of me. My school community just absolutely wrapped their arms around me. I felt the embrace of God through them. My colleague
Mhm.
took
Through
over all
others, yeah.
my classes, like, shout out to Mike, like, he just took over and, he was coaching, he was teaching his own classes, he was taking care of my stuff, like, and so many other colleagues helping in the classroom, on the grounds. My Emily of Events team
Mm.
stepped up and took care of our clients in generous ways, and down to my meals.
Mhm.
When my school community and friends were taking care of meals for me, and when there wasn't really, like, a meal train, I think it was more like they had just sort of self-organized, and I remember every single time when I was like, "Okay, well, I'll be done with that meal here. Okay, does that mean I need to figure out a grocery order? Does that mean, just tasks like that were very hard
Yeah.
in the first few months of the brain recovery. Multitasking was difficult, lots of brain fog. So God, like, literally, I'd get a text or a phone call, "Hey, I'm gonna drop food off on your porch," and there would be a meal. So even, like, the manna of, like, a daily bread was given to
Mm.
me, right after the accident had happened. I I had am not typically, I'd never named my cars. I had named my car Magnolia, just my way of how I acquired her. But my sweet Prius that I love, and she saved my life with God. But then 2 days after my accident, a friend showed up with a package of food, and it was wrapped in a tea towel, and the tea towel had part of a hymn on it, "Strength for today, bright hope for tomorrow." And laid on top of it were magnolia leaves. This friend had no idea that I love
Mm.
magnolia trees, that I named my car that, and that my car, that's the car that saved my life, and that in that
Yeah.
moment, I just felt such like, I felt God lock eyes with me. Like, "You I will give you strength for today, and there is bright hope for tomorrow." Because I was like, I
Mm.
haven't had a brain injury like this before. Like, the concussion I had before was like, I felt better in
Yeah.
2 weeks, And I didn't know how long, like, I didn't know what the outcomes would be. Will I be able to
Right.
what am I going back to? Am I going back? Like, so, it wasn't all the answers to the questions, right? But God was just
Mhm.
dropping breadcrumbs for me the whole way. Like, "I'm with you. I see you. I love you. I'm gonna do this. We're gonna do this together." Um,
Yeah.
yeah, those are some really tangible examples. Is that helpful? Am I answering the question?
Mhm. It does. Yeah, I appreciate that, and just how God works through his people
Mhm.
too. That we need to remember that as believers, that even just showing up in a very small way, tangible way, like, it goes a long way when we're the body of Christ and everyone's
Mhm.
showing up in their small ways. I wanna fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
There's kind of this thing that I've been noticing with God when he's really trying to teach us something specific. It's like when the pendulum is far one way, sometimes it feels like he'll make the pendulum swing
Hmm.
far other way
Hmm.
to, like, get us to the end of ourselves and show us kind of the opposite, if you will. But then that the sweet spot's actually in the middle. So, like, with
Hmm.
you is like this 101 miles per hour, full speed
Mhm.
ahead. I can do this on my own. I have a lot of energy, and again, not that those things were wasted, but that's kind of where you were at. And then it was like this pendulum that ended up swinging all the way to you on the floor,
Mhm.
essentially. Like, I can't do anything.
Mhm.
And so, as you've healed and moved forward and engaged back with life and with work, have you been able to find this kind of better middle ground of both abiding with God and that being before the doing, but yet we still have to pay bills?
Yeah.
Like, so what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would very much say that's very messy for me right now because
Hmm.
been, you know, I've been out of sabbatical for like 14 months, but I've still been living and I've really reoriented my life and I've had the privilege of that through the gift of my business and I have been able to make my own schedule. What's also true is I'm still learning with wobbly legs how to walk again. It's kind of like a PT patient that has, had an injury and is learning to use those muscles again.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
for me, I learned those muscles in a very, like you said, a very extreme pendulum swing the other way, like on the floor. And so now
Mm.
I'm learning to use those muscles as I reintegrate into life, and it's a lot of experiment. There's just a lot of crying. There's a lot of
Yes.
asking for help. I'm inside of some really supportive spaces through my spiritual director, a therapist, a coaching, leadership coaching that is helping because the thing is, when you're building your life in a fresh way, you've never done it before like this. And,
Yeah.
I'm still in some very familiar physical landscapes, right? I still live in Kansas City, you know, and still have
Right.
like,
Yeah, it's not a complete life
right.
change. Yeah.
But I am my operating system has shifted. And so
Mhm.
that's learning to walk again inside of a new operating. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of like, oh no, am I gonna like I'll have some trauma response inside of, oh no, will I do it the old way again and be too hustly? And I have to remind
Yeah.
like you're safe and this is new and it's gonna be clunky. You're not gonna it's the point is that we're learning how to walk afresh. So
Yeah.
even now, and
Yes,
I think
so true.
especially now, there is again an invitation into gentleness with self and receiving God's love and agreeing with it in this phase of the journey because it's
Mm,
easy. Like, we all have lots of soundtracks going all the time. It's easy to be kind of harsh. Like, you should have this figured out by now. You should know how to
right.
do it. And I'm like, well, actually, self, we're we're gonna keep. I guess I haven't learned this yet, and I will keep
Or maybe just haven't
practicing.
learned it in full, right?
That's
Like you've
true.
learned it,
That's
but
that's good.
we're not gonna learn anything
Mhm.
in full until heaven,
You're right.
right?
That's
And
good.
so there's never a time this side of heaven that we've made it,
And
unfortunately.
yeah, and there's always
It's going to be a rub.
that's good. And there's always deeper layers. I think it can feel disorienting to
Exactly.
be like, I thought we already did this lesson, but it can feel like, did I
Did I not get it
backslide?
right?
Yeah. But it's not really about that.
Did I miss it?
Yeah, more and more I'm learning
Yeah.
that it's not so much a straight line, it's more about expansion. And
Mm,
that's
that's
not
good. Yeah.
linear, that's more like going deeper, it's
Mhm.
more of a circle going deeper and
Yes.
deeper and deeper, and so we might come back around the mountain and it feels like, "Oh, I've already been here before, I got it wrong." Well, no, you didn't, like, this is just another layer
Yes.
in the journey and into a deeper knowing and experience with God and self and
Mhm.
others, so
I appreciate that because I think we can easily be hard on ourselves. Like,
Mhm.
okay, God, I guess I got that wrong. Like, I guess I'm just messing this up and maybe I'm not made to do this. And, oh, look at me. I slipped back in my old patterns or whatever. But that's just life. And
Mhm.
honestly,
Mhm.
those of like you who are being intentional and trying
Mhm.
and taking it to God and
Yeah.
saying, like, if I do mess this up, just gently correct me. And if I am going the wrong way, or I make a wrong decision, or you didn't, whatever, like just gently correct me. And the more that we can have that curiosity and
Mm.
that openness, and that he's not guilting us or shaming us, like,
Mhm.
why did you do that? Why did you go that way?
Right.
It's not like that. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna, get you over here. We're gonna shift here. Or like you mentioned, like that expansion piece. It's not about doing it right or wrong. He's like, no, it's just, I'm continuing to expand your being and you're becoming more like
Mhm.
me. That's a sanctification process, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I love that so much. So I'd love to hear, like, because it sounds like two different people. Like Emily 4 or 5 years ago, whatever, or however many years. It feels like yesterday was 2020, but I guess that's
Yeah, I
been a
know.
while. And then the Emily today, right? And so, sometimes we can also be hard on ourselves, like thinking we're not changing
Hmm.
quick enough or, "Oh, here we are, same lesson again." Like, "Whoops," but at the same time, like, that's such a short time as well. And so I'm curious if you were speaking to Emily before, I don't know, let's say 2019 Emily and Emily today, like, what would you
Mm.
want to say to her? Or what would you want to say to maybe a listener who finds themselves in similar places that you've been?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So tender to think back to our former
Mm,
selves, and I
yeah.
just kind of cup her face in my hands and say,
Oh.
like, this story is beautiful. It's not over yet. You will never be
Mhm.
alone, and you are so
Mhm.
loved. Eh, I just think too, as I look back, part of my journey into learning to host myself and to step into my essence of as a celebrator is learning to celebrate the journey, and you hear
Mm.
like it's the journey, not the destination or whatever. It sounds cheesy, but destinations matter,
But it's so true.
but the journey is equally important. It's part of the very
Yes.
deep formation that God has for us and are
Yeah.
becoming more into our true selves, like that he's designed us for reflecting him and more like him. And so I honestly just bless my former self with gentleness. And I bless listeners wherever you're at in your
Mhm.
journey that I just invite you. to gentleness with yourself. Andy Colbert's book, Try Softer, has been a very sweet concept for me.
Mm,
You know, instead of like the white knuckle of even like try to change, try to get healed, try to,
yes.
that's even like in nervous system
Yes.
speak, like a fight or flight response. And of like, I have to do this
Mhm.
now or else. And of just like, what does it look like to try softer and gentler with myself, to welcome parts of myself that maybe I've, exiled a bit, to get curious, and you mentioned curiosity, Brianna, versus
Mhm.
this is a multiple choice or true false test, this life thing. No, no. This is
Right.
basically it's an experiment. We're on a hike, like stuff happens and we get to enjoy being enjoyed and loved by our maker in the process of our learning. Never ever with a little child who's learning to walk would we be like, "Come on, get it right." We're
Right.
literally the whole time, or if you wanna do the PT example, like with a patient, we'd never be like, "Oh my gosh, you should have it by now. You've had 10 reps." Like, we would
Right.
just be like, "Oh, man, we're so proud for you. Way to go. I'm so happy for you. And
Yes.
and I'm right here with you." So, to my former self
Mhm.
and to all of us, just a blessing of gentleness and presence and curiosity and love, really.
I love that. Well, as we kind of just wind down, I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything, just all the topics we've talked about, or maybe a whole new one that you feel really burning on your heart that you would just want the listeners to hear?
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's that you're right where you're supposed to be. Like,
Mm,
God has not forgotten you or me. He is right with you, shoulder to shoulder, like tandem attached.
yeah,
It could be easy to say that, and if you're in a season that feels like you're not sure where God is, like, hold space for that tender spot and how disorienting that is. And I just bless each of us in the knowledge that we are companions and we are deeply loved right where we're at, and the story's not over yet.
that's good. I would just add too, we've talked some about purpose and kind of discovering purpose, and part of that being like learning what to say no to say, be able to say yes, have the capacity to say yes to what God really has for us. But kind of the kicker, even in purpose, is that purpose is right where your feet are.
Hmm,
That doesn't mean that God can't lead you into something more. Like, I see it as more of a narrowing path, but it doesn't mean we're not on the path of purpose. And so, for women listening, if you're wanting to like discover your purpose, ask God how to use you right where you are
mhm,
in the moment that you are, or conversation, or the people in your life and the people that you encounter. Like, that's actually like the work.
mhm.
And when you start there, it unfolds and expands from there, right? And so even to kind of what you were saying about sometimes we can get wrapped up in like destination, and it's like actually the point is the journey. It is the learning that is happening between the mountains and the valleys.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's so good.
Mhm.
And as before we just kind of let everyone go here, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about kind of what you're up to today and anything you'd want to tell our listeners to know about.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. Yeah, well, a couple of things I have going on. Of course, I have the event cleaning design company that provides full service cleaning and design. We are booking clients for 26 and 27. Adjacent to that, I offer consultation and coaching for events. And that's for a person that says, "Hey, I want to
Mm,
be a really intentional host and facilitator inside of a gathering that I'm in charge of or that I'm a part of. Emily, can you help me do that? I'm fine to plan it and do the thing. And that's anything from like, family night ritual to like, you know, wedding or big party. Like the range of
Yeah.
that, the point
That's
of
so fun.
those conversations is like helping you narrate and define the intention and purpose of your event, helping you with logistics, make a plan that you can carry out, and then helping you host yourself and make a plan for hosting yourself through
Hmm.
that process so that you are showing up from a place of overflow. So that's something that I
Yeah.
think is accessible to a lot of people and that I love doing.
Because you
I
can do a
enjoy
lot
that.
of that online,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Like if
absolutely.
somebody like if I was hosting a big dinner party, it's like, "Emily, can I get your expertise on this?
Mhm,
I wanna make sure I'm thinking of all the things
mm,
even though you're not physically right here with me." Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that kind of hybrid approach. That could be really helpful.
And then one more thing that listeners might be interested in is just to stay tuned. You can find me at emilyloveevents.com. Emily at emilyloveevents.com. The ways to contact me will be in the show notes. But if you're interested in practicing pause, maybe you're someone that has practiced that before, or maybe you're like, hey, I haven't, but I want to learn to have a listening life and I want to start practicing ways of doing
Yeah.
that. I am hosting online and in-person events at different points throughout the year for it's like a mini retreat. It's a few hours where
Mm,
you just
mhm.
block off and there's some facilitation to help you at the beginning kind of prime the space. You get to go have a quiet space. I it's really communion. It's not really just solitude because you're with yourself and God. But and then there's a invitation to come back together for some debrief. So you can stay tuned
Hmm.
for those events as well. But also just extend a generous invitation. I reserve some calendar time every month to just have a chat with anyone. If you're inside of a space that you're weary
Yeah.
or a health space, any kind of health space or brain injury recovery space, I reserve a little bit of time to on my calendar to chat and see if there's anything I can even encourage you
Yeah.
in or resources I can connect you to that have been helpful to me that may be a fit.
I love that as you kind of went before some people, right, that could be listening, that you're willing to kind of give back in the ways that you've learned things. I think that's really beautiful. And that a lot of times our purpose can be found in those spaces. Not that it's just that, but that you're allowing it to
Mhm.
also be that or be a part of it. I think that's really beautiful.
Oh,
Well,
thanks.
Emily, thanks so much for everything today. I really got a lot out today. I'm sure our listeners did too. So I appreciate you. And yes, again, to our listeners, if you want to reach out to her for either events or even online coaching about taking a pause or, kind of learning between that hustle and that being part, please reach out to her. We'll have all her information in the show notes. And so thanks again for joining us and join us again next week for another inspiring story. Thanks for listening in today, and we hope that you enjoyed today's episode.
Just remember, your story matters, and God is using it to create echoes way beyond what you can see.
If this episode encouraged you, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time, keep trusting God, leaning into His purpose, and allow your life to echo His love.